So, I mean, Lawrence, you are a massive comic book fan.
Yes.
What's your verdict?
I've wanted to see this movie for 35 years, and I'm really, really, really happy.
This will set up the Justice League universe, and like what the Avengers did for Marvel, will hopefully give all of the DC fans out there their own cinematic superhero team to finally rally behind.
I mean, honestly, the first thing I thought was like, well, wait a minute, that's not, you know, I was thinking of them doing the sort of the origin story, the new Batman. He comes out, he you know, rediscovers himself, he wants to avenge his parents' death, he fights the supervillain. I thought, that's not me, I'm not that Batman, you know? Right. And Zach was like, no, this guy, he's older and he's really f***ed up and he's broken down and he's on the edge of moral bankruptcy. God, clearly your man.
We had a long conversation about just taking ownership of that, of giving it to the audience in a controlled way that I felt was consistent with the escalation of the campaign. To us, it really made sense to give Doomsday to the audience now. I really wanted to make the audience a promise that though I'm super excited and happy and fulfilled by the conflict of Batman and Superman, there's also a bigger world to start to think about.
Shut up if you're saying you're not gonna go see it, because you are.
I'm excited for this movie. I like Man of Steel. I think I like where the DC cinematic universe is going.
Some people thought you couldn't be Lex. You were getting hate before they'd even seen you.
Yeah, mainly my parents.
The director then tossed Marvel's recent superhero film, Ant-Man, under the bus and added, they're not just like the flavor of the week Ant-Man. It's a movie, okay?
It's a movie.
Scare people into thinking this is a critical film. To the Film Critics Circle Award for audience movie.
So yeah, the theatrical cut of Batman v Superman is released and everyone thinks it's a stinking pile of garbage. Well, except me. I had some fun with it, but even I can admit that it's extremely flawed and in no way is a good film. But pretty soon it comes out that there's a whole bunch of stuff that got cut out of the movie, and apparently Zack Snyder basically lost all creative control once the editing process began. So the studio decides to release an extended cut, which adds an extra 30 minutes worth of deleted scenes, re-edits certain parts of the movie to how Snyder originally was envisioning, and it's rated R. Fans all collectively cried out that this would completely fix the movie, while others claimed that it was just a cash grab by Warner Brothers. So did it actually fix the movie, or was it just a cheap cash grab? Well, it's kind of both. Overall, the movie does only benefit from the additional scenes, but it's not like these extra scenes fix every problem in the film. Like Lex Luthor still sucks. They give him a few extra lines to explain his motivation a little bit, but he's still a pain to watch. Wonder Woman still feels forced into this movie. Gal Gadot, again, is amazing in the role, but she doesn't really have a purpose to be here other than teasing for her own movie and Justice League. Also, this scene is still terrible, and the last 40 minutes, which is now the last hour of the movie, is still mostly boring end-of-the-world garbage and has the same issue that Man of Steel's climax had with the whole high-stakes, low-tension thing we discussed in the previous review. Also, Lois Lane investigating who was framing Superman in Africa is still pointless, since the audience already knows it's Lex.
The metal was developed by a private company.
What company?
LexCorp.
Oh my god, you're telling me Lex Luthor, the most well-known Superman villain, is the villain? What a twist! But there are some things that are fixed because of the added scenes. Lex Luthor's plan makes more sense now since it's further expanded upon in the Ultimate Cut, and things are actually explained. There's some more of Superman saving people, which is always nice. Clark Kent gets some more screen time and makes it feel more like a Superman and Batman movie instead of a Batman movie featuring Superman, and it also fleshes out Superman's motivation for wanting to take down Batman. The scenes of Clark investigating in Gotham not only show why Superman realizes he has to stop Batman, but it also shows how Batman hasn't always been this violent with one single line.
Well, there's a new kind of mean in him. He is angry, and he's hunting.
From this we can conclude that at one point in Batman's career, he was the Batman we all know, but something pushed him over the edge. Most likely the death of Jason Todd combined with the arrival of Superman. There were entire integral parts of the story that were for some reason cut out of the original version that caused the movie to make no sense. For example, when the bomb goes off in the courtroom and Superman can't see it before it goes off, he blames it on...
I'm afraid I didn't see it because I wasn't looking.
But this ends up looking like lazy writing in the theatrical cut. But in the Ultimate Edition, Lois Lane figures out in her only useful subplot that they ended up cutting out in the original, that the bomb was lined with lead, which is why Superman couldn't see it. You had entire perfectly fine scenes filmed to explain what appears to be a plot hole, and you chose to cut it out. Why? Another example of this is that in the theatrical cut, there's a scene in Africa where Superman saves Lois from some terrorist dude, and then it immediately cuts to this lady from the African village, claiming that Superman killed a bunch of people in her village and burned them alive. Of course, we as the audience never saw that happen, so we're just left completely confused as to what she's talking about. The rest of the movie, people are all angry at Superman for killing people in Africa, and he never really argues against it except for one single line.
I didn't kill those men, if that's what they think.
And it overall just feels really confusing. However, in the Ultimate Edition, the whole Africa sequence is extended, and we see some dudes killing the African men and burning them alive to purposely make it look like Superman did it. Then later in the movie, we find out in another deleted scene that the lady claiming that Superman killed the men in the village is being paid to say those things by Lex Luthor. Oh yeah, and she's also killed by Lex Luthor's thug dude. This whole storyline perfectly explains something that confused everybody when they watched the theatrical cut. Why the hell did Warner Brothers think it was a good idea to cut important information like this? Were they just afraid of releasing a 3-hour-long movie? Because if so, they definitely shouldn't have been. If the 3-hour version greatly improves the story and character arcs, then why sacrifice that for a shorter runtime? I mean, yeah, audiences are more likely to go to a movie with a slightly more digestible runtime, but they're also more likely to go to a movie that is, you know, good. I honestly believe if this version of the film was originally released, the critical reception would have been much more positive. Just look at some of the critical reviews of the Ultimate Edition. Most of them are positive, and the majority agrees that it greatly improves the movie. The Ultimate Edition also changes the order a lot of the scenes are presented in, making the movie flow a lot better. Again, it appears here that Warner Brothers originally cut the scenes together in a way that made the movie feel more fast-paced than it should have been, especially in the first half. While it's not necessarily exciting, the first hour and a half of the Ultimate Cut is a really slow burn, with tension slowly building up throughout the film. This is what the first half of the theatrical cut should have been, but instead it was cut so that all of the slow buildup is rushed through and is almost completely nonsensical. It's pretty ridiculous actually that the studio thought it was a good idea to choose a quick and quote-unquote exciting pace over a logical buildup of tension between characters. Making the film faster paced on paper may seem like a good way to win over audiences, but for this type of story it just doesn't work at all. You know, it really is sad that Warner Brothers for some reason thought it was a great idea to completely break up the flow of their movie just so they could make a little bit more money.
Hey kiddos, it's me, Chad McGurgan, and this is just a friendly reminder to always disable ad blocker. That's the Chad McGurgan way.
Hello? Anyone? What the hell? Hey, you. What is this?
Calm down, Nathan. Everything's alright. I'm Dr. Barton.
Why do I have this brace on my arm?
Well, Nathan, you're a very lucky man.
Lucky?
Yes, a few months ago you were struck by lightning on the way out of a friend's house. Luckily you weren't hit directly, but the blast still affected you. Miraculously, you survived with the only injury being to your arm. Ever since then you've been in this hospital in a coma.
So what, is my arm like broken or something?
Well, Nathan, here's where this gets difficult. The blast fried your nervous system, and it destroyed all functionality in that arm. I'm afraid it's permanently paralyzed.
Telling me that I can never move my arm again.
That's right. Unfortunately, the bad news doesn't stop there. 3 of your other friends were hit by the lightning as well. Robbie, Mayank, and Noah. Robbie and Mayank are still in comas, and we hope they recover, but Noah was killed on impact. I'm sorry.
So you're saying I can't dab anymore?
Excuse me?
So if you're saying that I'm paralyzed, how am I supposed to dab?
Nathan, I don't think you're hearing me correctly. Noah is dead.
How am I supposed to dab?
Well, I suppose you could dab with your left arm.
It's not the same. It's not the same at all.
Well, I'm truly sorry, Nathan, but it does seem like you'll never dab again. I'll give you some privacy.
Hello?
Hi, this is Dr. Barton. I'd just like to let you know that Nathan has woken up from his coma and will be out of the hospital in no more than 3 days.
Who?
What? Nathan, your cousin. You brought him here along with your other friends after they were struck by lightning.
Oh, yeah, right. I remember that now.
Well, we looked at Nathan's emergency contacts, and you were the only contact on the list. And as he is both unemployed and homeless, we were hoping you would let him stay at your house until he fully recovers and is able to work again.
I don't know. I mean, I gotta crank out these DC reviews. I don't know if I'll have time for babysitting that kid, you know?
DC reviews? With all due respect, sir, there's a life on the line here.
Yeah, and my channel's on the line here, too. My analytics ain't looking too good, okay? Views are down, retention time is down, everything's going down. And if I don't upload more videos, I'm not gonna make any more money. And if I have to nurse Nathan back to health, then I'm not gonna be able to upload any more videos.
Please, Ben. I highly recommend you reconsider this. He needs
Sorry, I have to get back to filming so I can get more of that bank, you feel?
You are a despicable, greedy, awful human being, and I hope you realize.
What were we talking about again? Oh, yeah, that's right. Warner Brothers being a despicable, greedy, awful company. Now, I've seen some people make the argument that Warner Brothers isn't in the wrong here, but instead the writers Chris Terrio and David S. Goyer are to blame for writing such a long and complicated script for what many think should be just a simple superhero movie. In a way, they have a point. A story about Batman and Superman punching each other really doesn't need to be 3 hours long, and it definitely doesn't need to be this complex. But even so, Warner Brothers still shouldn't have to cut this movie to shreds just to get a shorter runtime, especially when it makes this already complex and confusing story even more difficult to understand. While the Ultimate Cut obviously fixed this by adding 30 minutes to the movie, there are many people who watched it and are still confused at what exactly the point of this film was. Well, besides setting up Justice League, I think everyone got that bit, because they shoved it in your face. Of course, there's tons of DC fanboys and girls all over comment sections crucifying anyone who says they found the movie confusing, labeling them as stupid and too immature to understand the deeper meaning of the film. Others blame the writers and Zack Snyder for not making an easily comprehensible film, and that a Batman v Superman movie shouldn't be even remotely hard to understand. All of this does bring up an interesting question. Is it the audience's job to understand the messages and meanings to a film? Or is it the director/writer's job to make the audience understand? To further discuss this topic, let's look at some other movies that are vastly considered confusing or very ambiguous. A prime example of this type of film is Christopher Nolan's Inception. Personally, I never found this movie confusing at all, but before I watched it, I heard it was the most confusing movie of all time. It's not. Although it's not confusing for me, it obviously confuses other people, and this could simply be because a lot of people turn off their brains when they watch movies. I mean, Inception doesn't spoon-feed the audience, and it certainly doesn't dumb things down for them either. Nolan respects the general filmgoer's intelligence enough to make a smart movie without having to force in an overwhelming amount of explanations and exposition. Basically, the people who actually think while watching movies will get it, and those who don't, well, won't. This helps support the argument that it's the viewer's job to understand a complex movie, because a director or writer should be able to make any type of film they want, no matter how confusing or complicated it may be. Stanley Kubrick, one of my favorite directors of all time, made films that couldn't be even remotely understood until multiple repeat viewings. A Clockwork Orange and The Shining both are more riddles than they are movies, both only loosely following an actual plot structure, while 2001: A Space Odyssey ditches the concept of a plot structure altogether. If you don't use your brain while watching this movie, it's not going to make sense at all. In fact, even if you do use your brain, it still most likely won't make sense, at least the first time you watch it. The movie is structured like an enigma, making repeat viewings necessary and automatically sparking conversation about the film and its many different interpretations. And of course, Kubrick intentionally structured this film and others this way. He wanted the audience to be confused, and he wanted them to have to think while watching his films. He was clearly a strong believer that the audience should have to earn understanding of the movie through their own thought. His movies were lost on many who didn't want to take the time to truly think about what they had just watched. Yet, they were also praised, and still are to this day, by those who appreciate and understand the details and thought put into these confusing and enigmatic masterpieces. However, on the other side of the spectrum, there's many directors and writers who believe they need to make the audience understand their film, and that every bit of information needs to be shoved into the viewer's face, or else the concept will be lost. I mean, can you blame them for thinking this? Let's take a look at the top 10 highest grossing movies of all time, shall we? Avatar, Titanic, The Force Awakens, Jurassic World, The Avengers, Furious 7, Age of Ultron, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, Frozen, and 2017's Beauty and the Beast. Do you notice the similarity between all these films? Because I do. All of them are incredibly dumbed down. I'm in no way saying these are bad movies. In fact, I love some of these films, but none of them are considered intelligent. They're not really stupid either, they're just right in the middle. Not too dumb, not too smart. I think I'll just let Mr. Plinkett explain this to you guys, because he said it better than I ever could in his review of Titanic.
Well, my interest in the movie lies more in the technical and historical. I don't think that's the case for 99% of the movie-going audience. This film was in theaters for nearly an entire year and had sellout crowds over and over again. Why? And it's not because Titanic had realistic, compelling characters wrought with emotional conflict. I therefore must say that my Titanic review results in this conclusion. Most people are dumb and don't like to be challenged intellectually or emotionally. They like the familiar and gravitate towards things that feel safe and non-confrontational. Titanic as a movie played it safe. James Cameron isn't a lousy screenwriter. He might, in fact, be a f***ing genius of some kind. The success of movies often comes in their simplicity, just like how most newspapers are written on the 4th grade reading level. You see, the average human IQ is 100. So if you want your film to make money, you've got to aim for average. Just look at the top box office films of all time, and then consider Suicide. It's the reason why a quality film like Hugo earned nearly 10 times less than a movie like Shrek 2. Directors like Cameron and Spielberg are masters at pulling at those all-important heartstrings. With some exceptions, they are the makers of the movie versions of Applebee's, Panera Bread, and TGI Fridays. Exceptionalism is the exception, my friends. The brilliant, complex, and challenging falls to the wayside, while the safe and the familiar is the norm. So this is why I can't say officially that Titanic is a bad movie. You see, Titanic aimed for the middle, and it hit the mark perfectly. Titanic makes you step back and look at the bigger, more depressing picture, that we're mostly creatures of habit, and we're all average. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry.
If you couldn't already tell, I much prefer movies that hand the responsibility of understanding them over to the viewer than ones that spoon-feed us information exposition. However, I would have to be an idiot to ignore that the latter types of films make a hell of a lot more money. Averagely intelligent movies sell, and while smart and confusing movies often sell as well, they're much riskier money-wise. But that's why I love those kinds of movies so much more. They take risks. Film gets pretty boring when it's always played safe, which is why it saddens me that playing it safe is always rewarded with huge box office numbers. Maybe that's part of why this movie didn't make as much money, especially after opening weekend, that box office analysts predicted it would. Maybe Batman v Superman was just more intelligent than people expected or wanted. And for the record, since a lot of people claim this movie is stupidly written, I fully believe that this movie is an intelligent one. Unlike in Man of Steel, the themes and symbols are underneath the surface and ambiguous. So there's not much of, look, Superman is like Jesus, do you get it? Do you understand the symbolism? It's cause he's like Jesus Christ, whoa! I mean, there's still some of that, but there's so many different themes and character arcs that aren't shoved in your face, but instead are more naturally progressed and can easily be missed if you go into this movie with the mindset of watching a basic action movie, which many did. I mean, what are there, 4 action scenes in this movie? And it's 3 hours? Basically, don't watch this expecting a lot of action. This movie is more of a political thriller, if anything else, and at times, it's really a deconstruction of these famous superheroes and comic book characters that we all know and love. Now, whether you like that or not is up to you, but I think it's unfair for people to hate this movie because it wasn't just fun action scenes the whole time, when it's clear that that's not what the film was trying to be. I really do believe if this movie was marketed as more of a political thriller instead of a big action God versus man movie, it would have done much better financially and even critically, since expectations would be vastly different. So, to answer the question I raised earlier, I do think that it's the audience's job to understand a film. But unfortunately, in today's movie market, the director/writers often need to make the audience understand if they want financial success. And that's why this movie was marketed as a huge action film. Because all of Warner Brothers' financial analysts obviously knew that that sells far better than an intelligent political thriller, so they just mismarketed it. That's hard to say. They mismarketed it purposely to get more butts in theater seats. But unfortunately for them, that marketing strategy is ultimately what killed their box office numbers. It really is sad that a movie needs to be marketed as or be averagely intelligent in order to be a huge success. But that's just what makes the most money, it seems, and each year more and more movies like this are made, and less smart movies are being made. But my friends, let me tell you, the market is shifting and will continue to shift. You know where you can find some of the best writing in media today? Television. More and more creative writers are leaving films behind because of this influx of bland and unintelligent films and moving to TV where there's far more creative freedom. Shows like Westworld, Legion, The Leftovers, Better Call Saul, and Fargo have some of the best and most enigmatic writing I've ever seen. This kind of stuff you'll most likely never see in modern films. Even comedies like Silicon Valley and Shameless are both hilarious and superbly written, and nothing is more satisfying than smart comedy. It is pretty sad that movies offer less and less creative freedom to all artists involved, but at the same time, it's great that TV has been getting better and better each year, and with more and more high-profile actors and writers and directors making the switch each year, it seems that even if films are getting less creative as time goes on, creativity will never really die. It'll just take different, new forms. Well, I guess that's the point of creativity.